Caleb Forrell.
I'm Alex Simpson.
I'm Kelan.
I'm Bret. I'm Bret Williams.
I'm Josh Elliott.
I'm Dawson Royce.
And today we are reviewing A Quiet Place.
Holy shit, this movie is amazing. The plot of this movie, they kind of like throw you right in. It takes place with this family. They can't talk or else they'll get killed by these alien creatures. So they use sign language and they do things so they can't hear them. The best thing about this movie is that they don't need dialogue to bring the plot forward. They do have some sign language, subtitles, and then some lines of dialogue. But other than that, this movie does not have that much dialogue and I loved it.
It reminded me of how Dunkirk kind of started out with
Oh, yeah.
no dialogue.
Also, the soundtrack was
Soundtrack.
gorgeous.
I did not like the soundtrack. It was stereotypical horror movie soundtrack.
I disagree.
When the emotional moments happen in this movie, the soundtrack even made it even more impactful for me.
That's what surprised me, was that I was expecting this movie to be scary, but I wasn't expecting to care emotionally about this family as much as I did.
Yeah. Well, here's the deal. If you've watched any of the other reviews that I've been in, I cry in every movie. I did not shed a single tear in this.
Oh, yeah, so wait, so-
Alex cry meter was a 0.2 because I kind of welled up, but like I thought about crying and then I was like, nah. The way the movie set it up made me actually kind of hate John Krasinski character.
False! I never cried during movies. And the way the movie was set up, in my opinion, I loved him so much. Like, I cried so hard. I mean, not Caleb cried. But like...
Oh, I cry at every movie. But this one was like scorching hot tears.
Yeah.
John Krasinski, in an interview, he was talking about how this movie wasn't focused on the horror, more so it was focused on the family. Why it's so impactful to me, in my opinion, because we really grow close to this family.
And for that reason, I think it's just personally a new like breed of horror movies. Like, because you're not exactly, don't walk through that door. It's a, no, I need you.
This is in the same range of horror movies that like The Babadook, Get Out, and Don't Breathe are in. We do get to know this family, and we have a distinct sense of their family dynamic, even though they hardly ever speak. And I think we get a sense of that dynamic because of the first scene.
The thing that I love about these characters is that they don't talk, but you still understand where they're coming from and how they're different from each other. They all have their own motives. There was some exposition in this movie, but it wasn't used with dialogue. Some movies treat their audience like they're stupid, where they have to use dialogue to explain it to them. But in this case scenario, they just like showed you, this is what's happening. This is what you need to know. Here you go.
I would actually argue that there's really not that much exposition at all. There might be some, like, the newspaper articles and stuff like that. Otherwise, it just goes right in. Day 89.
It trusts that the audience is smart enough to figure it out for
Yeah.
themselves.
I also like how it kind of started more towards like the midpoint of the whole like invasion, I guess, instead of the very beginning when like everything's going crazy, and how it never clearly explained how these monsters came to be. And I liked how they let like the audience decide like how it started.
I loved the setting in this movie, like the way they use their environment to like explain if something is going on. The sand trails, everything about that was just like, oh, that's so cool.
Everything was so intricate.
I kind of love how this family like already knows like what to do to survive.
It makes you wonder what the dad did before.
The mom was a doctor. If you pay attention, she knew the prescription of the little boy. She also was able to calculate due date.
It shows that the mom is actually continuing to school her kids, so it's not just them trying to survive against these monsters, it's them trying to thrive despite the monsters.
I actually think that the dad might have been a mechanic because he was able to do things like, first
Hearing
of all,
aids.
build the hearing aids.
Yeah.
Also, he knew which parts to get for the radio signal.
No, it's okay, there's noise.
I never felt
short.
that there was a moment in this movie that was dull or slow. I just felt invested this entire movie, and that's pretty rare. Even when there wasn't the suspense and horror, you just really got invested in these characters and the plot and everything, and I loved it.
There was one part though that I did not think needed to be in there. The old lady and the old dude.
Also, what was I gonna say? Oh, yeah. It shows, It slips every time I'm about to say it out of my mouth. It shows that, oh my god. It shows the opposition of the old man to
The person that does it later.
I thought it was kind of slow towards the beginning. It was an exposition of the story, so I feel like it can be slow. Plus, it's short.
Emily Blunt is a goddess.
So good in this movie. Every performance in this movie I thought was incredible.
True.
Even down to the kids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the kids were amazing.
It took me half the movie to realize that's the kid from Suburbicon.
Millicent Simmons, she's actually deaf. As much as we all love Emily Blunt, I think she was the standout performer. in the
Oh,
movie.
yeah.
I think she
Oh, yeah.
carried
Oh, yeah.
the emotional weight of pretty much everything.
I liked how they took advantage of John and Emily's relationship in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's their first time together in a movie. John Krasinski talked in an interview and said how amazing it is to see Emily Blunt actually like work on set.
The part where he said it was kind of family based, it's still horror based also because I peed my pants wrong 4 times.
But this movie, I
That's
think the
just
jump
me.
scares were earned. So many movies think that jump scares are the only way to scare an audience, or to just create
Yeah.
a loud noise.
And it gets
Yeah.
annoying if they do that, like Paranormal Activity.
They
That
do
was
rely
another
so
one.
much on suspense for the scares. Like, I think the scariest scene in the entire movie is the giving birth scene.
Yes.
I told you it'd work.
It's a boy.
I have osteoporosis.
Shut up.
The scariest parts, we were talking about how it wasn't the jump scares, it was when like everything was silent.
I really like how they use like the silence as a way to put the audience in the character's shoes. Like throughout the whole like theater, everyone was like totally into this movie and like quiet along with them. You got the same fear whenever the characters
Yeah.
made a sound, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, this movie needs to be seen with a group or like a theater. That's what it's made for.
That being said, though, audiences have the potential to ruin this movie.
That's
Yeah,
true. Yeah.
During my showing of the movie, there was a small child that was crying during like the first 15 minutes. 30 people just get up and leave.
Yeah.
But they left instead of the people with the baby.
No, the people with the baby left, but they had 30 people with them.
Josh was looking at me because I had like my Sour Patch Kids and I was trying to like take them.
When I was crying, Lauren kept trying to hug me. And I literally kept slapping her because I was like, let me cry. I just want my moment.
And I was like, Caleb, oh my, like he was sobbing.
And I just kept slapping her and she just kept trying to hug me and I was like, Lauren!
Yeah, so should we go to final verdicts?
Probably.
Okay.
School's canceled for tomorrow. Support Oklahoma teachers. Schools are not properly funded in our state, and so we're having a walkout. And on that note, let's go to final verdicts.
All right.
I first watched this movie, I gave it a solid 10, and I still give it 10. It was really good for me. I loved every second. It all flowed so well. There was no point where I was bored. I was always anticipating. 10 out of 10.
I, at first, gave it a 10, but I'm going to give it now a 9.8, mostly because the beginning was kind of slow for me.
I'm not a horror movie person. I don't enjoy them as much as other people do. I did think that there were some really slow parts, and there was some parts that were extremely repetitive, and so for that I'm gonna give it a 7.8.
Guys, when I saw this movie, I literally could not stop doing this for like the next 2 hours. This movie literally blew me away. It's one of actually my favorite movies of all time. Also, I'm not really a horror movie fan either. I get scared so easily. This movie had everything I wanted. It had a plot that didn't need dialogue to bring it forward. It had great characters that didn't need to speak to flesh themselves out. It had amazing tension. It had amazing storytelling. Everything about this movie I just absolutely love. And my score is a 10. Thank you so much. Go see this movie.
I love this movie so much. Like, just like Bret said, do yourself a favor and pay like $10. It's
Yeah.
worth it. I'm going to do the same rate as
Not
Caleb
the
with a 9.8. There was like just one cheesy part that I just felt like shouldn't have been there. That's why it's not a 10.
So unlike what some of these people have said, I actually am a fan of horror movies. But because I'm a fan, I don't really get scared by them that easily. This movie scared me a lot. I think it is one of the most unique horror movies I've ever seen, not just because of its premise, but also in its tone, in its message about family, and how emotionally connected I was to these characters. I will agree that there are some slow parts, but I feel like the slow parts are used well for exposition. There is never a wasted moment in this movie. It is paced perfectly. I loved it, and I think this is gonna go down in history as one of the best horror movies of all time, so I'm gonna give it a 10.
For those of you who are watching earlier in here, I got my popsicle open. I really think that this is an amazing horror movie. It has that new kind of horror movie that's coming in, that new breed. It's not necessarily, these 4 kids are in the woods. Let's see which one survives.
Josh's horror movie.
It helps build relationships between the characters and the audience. You're not necessarily afraid of the monster, you're afraid of losing that character. I'm going to give this movie a 10.
The final verdict is a 9.6.
Yeah!
It would be a
amazing.
9.9.
So what did you think of A Quiet Place? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Comment and let us know. And do not forget to subscribe to High School Film Nerds. Peace out! Woo! Nobody did it with me. Peace out!
Thank you for watching our video. Click here to subscribe to our channel.
And over here is our last video.
Bye.